When the flaws in the laws set to protect us all are revealed, there's only two options: stay broken or begin to heal.
We don't have any laws.
Our leadership is talking about reform. City council wants reform, the mayor wants reform.
And we know healing can be just as hard as being broken. Just ask Breonna Taylor's mother, who continues to fight with wounds still wide open.
The prayer that I have over my children is so much different than the prayer that they covered their children with.
But healing isn't just a trendy hashtag with blue likes and red hearts. It's actions leading to real change. Yes, removing statues is a start. Are you ready for your part?
The only way to combat racism to me is basically to tell the truth and to educate.
Are you ready to have the real conversations?
It's time for us to be proud. It's time for us to stand up and lift our voice and be heard.
The ones that will make you uncomfortable and accountable, but perhaps change this nation?
Good evening to you, everybody, and welcome to The Conversation. I'm Kerry Charles.
And I'm Matt Barnes. Another month has passed since our last conversation about racial inequality, and tonight it continues as we break down systemic racism and other issues that impact the black community.
Now, before we get started, we want to take a second to recognize a couple of our community partners who are helping spread the word about The Conversation. Radio 1 and Bounce TV are making sure people can hear what's being said, and our friends at Bounce TV are airing a simulcast of tonight's program.
Now, NBC4 anchor Darlene Hill will also be joining us a little later on in the show. But we want to get started on this edition thinking about what Central Ohio thinks about race relations. We wanted to know.
That's right. So we gathered information from a poll we recently conducted. Throughout the show, we will be updating you on the findings from the study and what Central Ohioans say matters most.
So, for instance, 44% of Central Ohio adults feel the relationship between races is good. When broken down by race, so 46% of white respondents say it's good, but only 33% of black respondents say that. And when you break it down by county, 35% of those who live in Franklin County thought it was good, compared to 42% who lived outside of Franklin County.
And now on the flip side, 21% of Central Ohioans feel the relationship is bad, with 30% being African Americans, while 17% of whites agree. 28% of those who feel race relations are bad in Central Ohio were from Franklin County, while 16% live outside the county lines. As you can see, 35% of Central Ohioans were neutral, with both whites and blacks agreeing at 37%. White privilege and systemic racism. Those are terms often used when discussing race relations, and oftentimes people are put off by them in part because they have no idea what those terms mean. Dr. Tiffany Bowden, an anti-racism educator, helps us understand.
The chance for equality, a push for reckoning in society. Some are having a tough time understanding the efforts, which are in response to decades of unjust practices.
People are so confused, they don't know what systemic racism is. What is it?
When we're talking about structural and institutional racism, what we're actually talking about is legalized racism by way of policies and practices.
This is kind of a loaded question, but where does that show up?
Oh, so many places. It shows up in the criminal justice system. It shows up in education, housing, banking, within political rights and advocacy work. It really literally is in every aspect of our infrastructure.
Like the days of Jim Crow, the Equal Justice Initiative reminds us of lynch mobs, which tortured and killed black people. Among those participants, many elected officials and prominent citizens. The white parents who voted to close and defund public schools, some harassed and violently attacked black students. And today, Black Lives Matter pushes the call for fair treatment of and for black citizens. One of its main focuses is policing. More often than not, the beneficiaries of systemic racism are whites.
A lot of times when we talk about white privilege, there's a lot of resistance to being able to acknowledge that someone has white privilege. There are so many different kinds of privileges in society. Racial privilege is just one. Of course, there's class privilege, there's able-bodiedness, there's sexuality, gender, religion, country of origin, language. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't struggle in society. It just means that you don't struggle because you are white. And also, it's important to understand that just because you have white privilege privilege doesn't mean that you are a bad person. It just means that you have a great opportunity to make a difference with the power that you have.
It's important to understand. In our race relations study, more than half of the adults we surveyed, both black and white, agree that individual prejudice is the source of most racial discrimination, which is very interesting because it matters how you approach the conversation.
And as you can see there's a list right there as we look at the different races broken down. It's a stark difference between the races. If you look, more black adults agree there is discrimination in the justice and education system, employment opportunities, and within banks and real estate, an area we don't normally think about.
That's right, which leads us to redlining and what it actually means.
Yeah, NBC4's executive producer Tanessa Jennings talked with Associate Professor Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries from the Department of History at The Ohio State University, who breaks it all down.
Redlining is essentially the policy of color-coding neighborhoods that mapped out every metropolitan area starting in the 1930s in America, and that identified neighborhoods that were white, neighborhoods that were black, neighborhoods that were transitioning from one to the other, and drew literal red lines or color-coded those neighborhoods that were red and identified those neighborhoods as ones that were not suitable for receiving government support for home loans.
That's what makes up these different communities, why you can go to an all-black neighborhood and then the school system is not as well funded as a suburban white neighborhood.
Yeah, it's critically important that we acknowledge that segregation and discrimination obviously existed before the 1930s and before the New Deal era of creating red lines around neighborhoods. But it was the federal government that actually established modern day segregation by mandating that all white neighborhoods be the ones that can receive loans for homes, and all black neighborhoods be the ones that could not receive loans for homes. And this established a new pattern of racial discrimination that we are still living with today.
How can the federal government do that? And it's legal. What loopholes, what?
Right. So this, it's the 1930s and Jim Crow segregation, legal segregation was the rule of the land, not just in the South, but really across the nation. And so it was always constitutionally dubious. And, it would take 15 years of lawsuits. And finally, in 1949, the court said that this is a violation of the 14th Amendment. This is unconstitutional. You can't discriminate against black folk. You can't say some people can get loans backed by the federal government and other people can solely on the basis of race. So was it unconstitutional? Yes. But was it illegal? No. And within that period, as long as it existed, it then established, even once it was ruled unconstitutional, it had established a pattern and practice that this is in fact the way to do business when it came to supporting loans and developing new neighborhoods and new communities in the suburbs and the like.
What do you think people of color have to do to make a difference, or what do we just have to do as one to get rid of the red line, to attempt to get rid of that?
Well, it's not something, the solution to the problem isn't something that rests solely on the shoulders of black folk, because black folk aren't the ones who are making the loans. Black folk aren't the ones who are developing the new subdivisions and the like. What black folk can do is they can put pressure on public officials. They can put pressure on the federal government. Right now, we don't have the most progressive administration, whether it's in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The HUD Secretary, Ben Carson, has actually been moving against changing zoning laws so that there are more diverse, economically diverse communities throughout the United States. So there are limits in terms of what we can do individually, but collectively, we can raise the hue and cry. We can call out discrimination where it exists. We can call out discriminatory policies. For example, communities that say, well, we're not going to discriminate on the basis of race, but the only homes that are allowed to be built here are single-family homes that the square footage is over 4,000 square feet. Well, guess what? Any working class folk, lower income folk are never going to be able to move into those communities because of the colorblind policies that exist. So we have to call those out where they are. In the end, it is really a social problem. It's really a national problem. And the problem isn't so much, it's manifest in housing, but the real issue is the priorities. Like, we have a priorities problem, and that's just not applying to sort of police and police funding, as we've heard so much, and people taken to the streets, but where do we choose to live, and where do we choose, and how do we choose to live, right? Do we want to live in these sort of exclusive, elite communities, or are we better served by having economically diverse communities? The statistics say that the more economic diversity that you have in a community, the stronger that community becomes, both in terms of its value of its property, but also in terms of the value and the ability of its schools, of its social safety net to provide for all people who live in that community.
Good information there. And good background in redlining. Well, now to people and politics. Tonight, as you know, is the last night for the Democratic National Convention, and it is a virtual gathering like no one has ever seen.
History being made on so many levels, but it's also about her story. History, her story. The nation heard from the first black woman tapped to run on a major party ticket. Kamala Harris is giving Democrats, even many Republicans, newfound energy.
And with Harris on the ticket, a number of black women are talking about what it's like to be the first or only. NBC4's Darlene Hill caught up with the first black woman to serve on the Ohio Supreme Court. But first, she runs down Kamala Harris's resume.
First of all, is the answer yes?
The answer is absolutely yes, Joe, and I am ready to work. I am ready to do this with you, for you. I'm just deeply honored, and I'm very excited.
It's news that's still giving both Democrats and Republicans the chills. Joe Biden announcing that California Senator Kamala Harris will be his running mate, an important and historic moment. Harris's early career included a stint as district attorney in San Francisco before serving as California's attorney general. In 2016, she was elected to the U.S. Senate, where she rose in prominence after grilling one of President Donald Trump's nominees to the Supreme Court.
We have not been given an opportunity to have a meaningful hearing on the nominee.
Harris made waves last year when she jumped into an already crowded field in the 2020 presidential race, but bailed out, lacking support and money. Since then, the former prosecutor has put together an investigation into why we're seeing this racial disparity for COVID-19 deaths. She's also pushing legislation to investigate the maternal mortality rate of black women. She wants to know why black ladies are 3 to 4 times more likely to die during childbirth. The 55-year-old Democrat is one of only 3 women to appear in the VP slot for a majority party ticket, following Democrat Geraldine Ferraro back in 1984 and Republican Sarah Palin in 2008. But Harris, the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, is making history of her own, becoming the first woman of color to be tapped as a vice presidential nominee.
I don't know that she needs my advice, but
what advice would you give her? I mean, you're in the same field, both of you are attorneys, but talk about that highest level and the pressure that comes with.
Trust her instinct. She got to where she is because she's smart and she's prepared. And when all of the arrows come at you, turn the TV off, forget about the external noise, and remember who you are. If you have not already been stood up inside with confidence and support and love, you can't go out there and do this.
Justice Yvette McGee Brown says that instinct and experience.
There is a song by Yolanda Adams, and I love this song. She says, if I'd written down everything that I prayed and dreamed about, You have given me more than I ever could have hoped and dreamed.
Mixed with faith and family helped her, this little girl who grew up in the Brittany Hills area of Columbus, become a lawyer and the first black woman to sit on the bench of the Ohio Supreme Court.
It never been anything I thought about. When I was in law school, I saw the Ohio Supreme Court as old white men. And so actually when the governor talked to me about it, I was really a little reticent. I was like, do I really want to do this?
Did you say in 2011, why is this even a discussion about you being the first?
Yeah, the fact that we were in now the 21st century and we're still making first, it was mind-boggling to me. I was the first person of color on that court in 37 years. 37 years. You know, in a state as diverse as Ohio, that should not be. And when I was in the King Center taking my oath and looked out at those hundreds of people, I realized that this was about more than just me. It was about them. And it was about any of those little girls and boys that look like me who were watching that we will get to a place where it will become commonplace and it won't be so exceptional to see a person that looks like me taking oaths in the highest offices of this land.
McGee Brown says for her, it wasn't about her making history, but making sure and setting a tone so that she wouldn't be the only black person on the state's highest bench. She wanted to do a good job. She wanted to be a good justice, making decisions solely based on the law. McGee Brown is known for her integrity, and she wanted to make sure that there would be no hesitation, no apprehension about nominating or swearing in another black woman or man.
I was the first black woman on the Common Pleas Court here in Franklin County. And I said that to my staff when we took office. I said, look, we know we have 6 years here, and we have to make sure that we do a good job and that we are not taken out by foolishness. So you will be at work on time, you will do your job all day, and we will make sure we give the taxpayers what they've asked for.
Judge, do you think that's a pressure that we carry as women, we carry as African-American women?
But it is a pressure that you feel intensely when you move into these environments. And I say to all the young people who are watching, take that challenge, because the only way that we normalize our presence is for each of us to strive for that highest level so that it won't be the exception, but it will be the expectation.
So that grit and grace, where did she and so many other women like her get it?
From black women, that strength that came all the way through our ancestors, through my grandmother, who did not have much, right? But they believed in the power and the words of our Constitution, and so they encouraged us when they had no objective evidence to see. My grandmother had no reason to believe that her granddaughter could one day sit on the Ohio Supreme Court, except she believed in the promises of this country.
And her family always did have hope. From the 6th through the 12th grade, YVETTE McGee Brown went to school half days because here in the city of Columbus in the 1970s, public schools were still very much segregated, and that little girl could never have dreamed of the life that she lives right now. Proof, Mrs. Brown says, that anything is possible. Just don't ever stop believing in yourself. She's such an inspiration and a mentor to so many right here in Central Ohio and beyond, and she's still practicing law here in Columbus. Back over to you guys.
Darlene, thanks. Columbus's first black fire chief grew up in Linden. Ned Pettus Jr. recently told me about an encounter he had with an officer. That officer stopped Pettus, who was 14 and on his way to church, frisked him in front of his neighbors and friends, then sent him on his way. He hopes young people don't let interactions like that one and the naysayers stop them from achieving.
I didn't give up, but that's what's heartbreaking to me about this neighborhood and the young people in this neighborhood. It's heartbreaking to know that they may not have the opportunities or may not know that opportunities exist.
Pettus, who graduated from Lyndon McKinley High School, go Panthers, joined Columbus Fire in 1977, inspired in part because he didn't see firefighters who looked like him. He became chief in 2002. Since 2016, Pettus has been Columbus's Director of Public Safety. Here in Central Ohio, white and black adults have differing opinions in terms of equality and opportunity when it comes to K through 12 education, community resources, and college, as well as employment. There's a difference here in how our neighbors are looking at these different categories in our community.
Absolutely, yeah. Just 3 in 10 black adults agree that opportunities are equal. That is compared to 6 in 10 white adults.
Hey, get away from me. It's the other guy. It's the other guy. It's the other guy. Put your guns down. They're kids.
A mother in California posted this video of her son and 2 other black teenagers being detained by deputies. Now, in the video, you could hear bystanders telling the deputies the teenagers were the victims. The mother says the 3 black teenagers were sitting at a bus stop when they were approached by a man who first asked them if they had any drugs, then tried to rob them at knife point. That incident is still under investigation.
4 black girls, one of them just 6 years old, handcuffed by police and put face down on the ground in Colorado. You can hear the cries in this video recorded just outside of Denver. The 6-year-old, along with the 12, 14, and 17-year-old girls and the driver, all handcuffed and forced to lay down on the ground, face down at gunpoint. Officers said the vehicle was reported stolen. However, the vehicle reported stolen was a motorcycle with the same license plate number, but out of Montana. I recently spoke with a therapist about how these encounters affect the children who experience them.
That video is traumatizing just watching. So if you feel a certain way watching it, you can only imagine what that child is feeling. To ask what you're feeling. And it's not a time for fantasy. We want to give them we want to be open and honest with the answers that we give them. If we don't know the answer, then we need to seek the answer. We need to, call, our local children's hospital or look up resources to see if you can both. Because if you don't know the answer and your child needs it, the best way to support them is to find the answer.
Now, racism continued to rear its head in my life at the college level with a KKK sign posted in my dorm room, and then at the corporate level with a derogatory note about the Jesse Jackson campaign back in the 80s. So we need to consider 2 things. Number 1, how early that we teach our children racism, and then number 2, how racism continues in the life of African Americans in America.
Our books are the bricks that build our society.
A professor at Columbia University says to understand society's uproar over racial inequalities, it starts where history lessons begin. The nationwide protests over racial injustice are also sparking questions about inequality in the classroom. In textbooks throughout the country, the history of minorities is often sidelined or marginalized, setting up lessons of racism.
When children first learn about black people in America, the first thing that they see in the textbook is slavery.
They may see an image of a family that's half-dressed. You may see slave quarters.
Is that racist?
Absolutely is racist. If your introduction to my history is my downtroddenness, you never see me as a victor.
Well, now the push for reform is rewriting the textbooks. NBC4 reached out to McGraw-Hill, one of the country's largest K-12 textbook publishers based here in Columbus, and asked them for an interview, but they declined our request. And children are not born racist. Instead, racism is something they are taught or something learned from outside influences over time. And sometimes it can come from just not knowing enough about people that are different from oneself. It is with that in mind, 2 local moms are hard at work making sure kids right here in Central Ohio are exposed to diversity and inclusion early on. And it's as simple as reading a book. As the world watched in horror and disbelief the life of George Floyd being taken by a police officer, Upper Arlington mom Julia Hanna had an epiphany.
It really made me, as a mother of a biracial daughter, want to do something, right? I was feeling a little bit hopeless. We live in Upper Arlington, which is a great community. But the reality is she would be most likely one of the only black children in school. And for me, I wanted to become more of her ally versus her mother and really put myself in her shoes as she's going through school and really make sure that the books that are in school, she can see herself in them.
After posting on social media her idea to put books about diversity and inclusion in elementary school libraries, she couldn't believe how quickly the community responded.
Within 5 days, my personal Venmo account had $6,000 in it, and it told Kat and I quickly brought Kat into the conversation, that there was a much bigger project here.
Kat DEPIZZO is the mom of 2 daughters. Her oldest is a part of the LGBT community.
If you're not exposed to diverse communities, and we live in wonderful communities, but they're not super diverse, and if you don't see that around you every day, you may not have the same empathy or understanding.
And so together, the two co-founded the Harper's Corner Foundation, named after Julia's 5-year-old daughter. The mission: to expand minds and grow hearts, one book at a time.
Books are amazing tools to help teach kids to learn just about each other, right, and what is outside of their communities. It also is a really good tool, I think, for educators and for parents in the schools to use as a conversation starter. You know, a lot of these topics, they're challenging. Sometimes you don't know how to start that conversation.
So far, Harper's Corner has partnered with all 5 elementary schools in Upper Arlington, all 3 in Bexley, and 3 in Worthington, and have donated nearly 1,000 books. But Julia and Kat have much bigger plans.
With the donations we've made so far, we're going to make an impact on 6,000 children with the 11 schools that we're in. But our intention is to be in every single Central Ohio elementary school, impacting all 80,000 children.
2 moms on a mission to stamp out racism, one book at a time.
Being able to go in, about a week ago, and donate books that showed stories about my daughter, about Harper, and so many other kids that weren't there before, and probably never were, some of them. You know, so that was probably one of the greatest wins and meaningful moments, I know, for me and for Julia, that is going to stick with us and help drive us forward to get in as many schools as we can, because we are a force to be reckoned with.
Yes, they are. Julia and Kat are also working with the schools to try and incorporate these books into the curriculum. If you want to donate money to help Harper's Corners Foundation, you can find more information on their Instagram page. Just search for Harper's Corner Books.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
You see a problem and you do something about it.
And that's what it's all about. That's what this conversation is about. You know, we started with the protests, and now you're starting to see action in state houses and just in people's houses as well.
Yeah, I think one thing that's so important is that people, us included, folks at home watching, we have to add nuance into the conversation. Right. People, you don't have to just take a side when it comes to dealing with these issues.
There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn, and there's so many issues. We just talked a little bit about systemic racism, but it's a very broad topic, and there's a lot to be discussed there. The last thing we'd like to leave you with is an ask to help us continue the conversation.
That's right. Send us your thoughts, questions to the conversation at WCMH.com. We do thank you for joining us for the conversation. For all of us here at NBC4, have a good night.
As you listen to the stories of the people who give this country its foundation, will you be ready to stand as a non-pandering ally as we continue the conversation?